of their own source revenues from sales taxes. All right? So roughly $1 in $6 in an average state comes in through sales tax revenue. In Florida, it's more like 1 in 2. All right? Our own source revenues, $1 in $2 comes out of sales taxes. So we have this sales tax model. Sales taxes are wonderful things when people are coming to Florida, spending money, going to Disney World, coming to South Florida, and we see the sales tax dollars flowing really nicely. So we have this boom and bust cycle related to sales tax revenues, and right now the economy's hurting, the state of Florida's hurting, and what do we see? Well, we see the legislature coming to grips with that. And then we've done it one session worth of coming to grips with that. Everything that I've seen, we're going to have another session of coming to grips with that. This shortfall in sales tax revenues. Beyond no personal income tax and state, the very strong reliance upon sales taxes at the state level, we also have some other things that impact the fiscal reality. We have this thing called the Save Our Homes Amendment that we're now going to revisit in, I think it's late January when we vote on the newest version of this. But the mid-1990s, Save Our Homes came on board, and essentially it capped, if you're in an owner-occupied dwelling, your property tax increase or your property value increase at 3% a year. Is really what it boils down to. We've been living with Save Our Homes. The people who are renters, the people who are second homeowners, and in particular the business owners in the state say that's not fair. Do something, legislature. So they've done something that, from my view, exacerbates that exact problem. But that's neither here nor there. So we've got Save Our Homes. We've also got caps on local property taxes. There is a statutory cap. You can only have your millage rate up to 10 mils. And believe it or not, there are some jurisdictions in Florida who are already there. They're at their millage cap. So they can't raise money through that rate, that avenue. They've got to go to other avenues. So the upshot of this chapter, and again, as Jim conceptualized it, was the theory of the 85 Act, state-funded and state-mandated, has turned into a reality in which we've got state mandate but locally funded and local entrepreneurship. That's one of the big themes of the chapter, is that the state has sort of not only enabled but strongly encouraged local governments go look for money. Impact fees, we're all for them. Infrastructure surtax, if you're a small county, by all means do it. We empower it and we encourage it. Create a CDD, a community development district, that allows you to do special assessments on homeowners. If you can find money, go look for it, because the state has not held up their share of the deal, is how Jim and I write it in the chapter. It is worth noting that in 2005, the legislature did pass Senate Bill 360. That was sort of a drop in the bucket, but a good drop. The state authorized new funds, $1.5 billion in that 1 year, of which $750 million is in recurring new funding for infrastructure. So there's been a little bit of a renewed, I won't say commitment, but a renewed leaning, if you will, of the state towards holding up their share of the bargain in terms of funding infrastructure in the state. So there's been a little bit of movement in that direction under that pay-as-you-grow movement back that was passed in 2005. But there was also sort of some entrepreneurship encouraged as part of that act. We're now living with this thing called proportionate share. And a proportionate share, from again my view, is government make a deal with developers to get them to pay up front their share of their infrastructure. Go find the money locally. Here's a little bit of state money, but at the local government level, you're encouraged to go find those resources. So we're still living with this. And what this all points to, from my view, is it very much echoes what Secretary Pelham said. And that is what the concepts were, what the intent was of the 85 Act was all well and good, but this issue of implementation and fundamentally this issue of funding has been a major, major stumbling block and a major broken promise. So sort of what we boil it down to at the end of this chapter is we say it's really hard to evaluate the 1985 Growth Management Act on its merits when it was essentially cut off at the knees within 2 or 3 years of being passed, when the state said, you know, we promised you money, but we're not so sure about that anymore. And we've been living with that ever since. So that's chapter 4 on the fiscal theory and the fiscal reality. And I'm not sure what's up next, Jim. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. You've heard mentioned a couple times by the presenters of what we refer to in the process of developing growth management as the ELMS committees, the Environmental Land Management Study Committees, 1, 2, and 3. Also in that group have been a host of smaller, more focused study groups. Dr. Bush's Growth Management Study Committee. It really represents a major part of our history and process that we have always gone back and reflected on the process with stakeholders, with experts, with people representing the different interest groups to try to fine-tune the act as we went along. And I'm very happy to be able to identify, I think, who was the executive director of ELMS 1. Is that right, Dan O'Connell? We won't give the exact year, but Dan O'Connell is here with us. That first committee was tasked with really operationalizing the 75 Growth Management Act, some of those early statutes that were passed under the guidance of then Governor Ruben Askew, and followed by committees 2 and 3. Couldn't help but commenting on when Tim was talking about funding, I heard a voice coming down from Gainesville. It sounded like Dr. DeGroat. Something to the effect, you're not darn right that the state didn't fund that act. But next is one of our faculty members here at the college. Except one of 2 or 3 we've asked to join us. They were not authors of the book, but they have been asked to evaluate specific chapters. David Prosperi has been Associate Dean, I believe, at the college, David, Chair of the Department, and Department of Urban Regional Planning, and now is Professor of Teaching and doing research and counseling and taking students on comparable education visits outside of our country so they can get a perception on what else is going on around the world. So David will comment on Chapter 7 by Carruthers et al., Growth Management and the Spatial Outcome of Regional Development in Florida. David.
Thank you, Jim. And the other thing that I think is important here, and this doesn't count for my 8 minutes, but from here on, the first set of speakers is really part 1 of the book. I'll figure out here. Part 2 is the evaluation part. Part 3 is the lessons part. And so far we've only heard from part 1. So now we get to part 2, which is the evaluation part. And aside from what Jim said, I am, by genome makeup, an empiricist, even though I fight it every day as I get older. But I am an empiricist with strong economic DNA. But I am subject to muses. This is sort of like a symphony, right? You've been sitting on your rear ends for like 45 minutes so far. You're well into the rhythm of this thing, and I'm going to come and do the alternative movement. I'm subject to muses, and my current muse is metropolitan form and structure. So somewhat what Efraim said, the region is important, consistency is important. But in my view, that phrase involves the merging of design, economics, and politics with a gaze focused on the region. Most of us focus our gaze on our municipality. It's hard to focus on the region. But we all know that regionalism is important, but we really can't focus on the region. And I think there's probably only a handful of people in the world who really try to focus on the region. Even Sir Peter Hall, perhaps the world's most dominant regionalist, only looks at banking. Okay? And not even where the banks are, just that they are concentrated on the globe. Over the years of these increasingly onerous administrative tasks and academic tasks, there have been a bunch of things that continue to bother me. One is the relationship, the difference between anticipatory normative statements, like the visions of the Growth Management Act,